Good afternoon. Father Foster here for your Econ lecture number 1. Econ lecture number 1. We're going to be looking at monopoly today and monopoly regulation. So you'll need your textbook. So get that out, call it up on your computer, whatever. You'll need to have something to look at with a text in it. So whatever you've been bringing to class, you'll need that. So we're going to be looking first, at least for a brief time, in chapter 9. That is page 208 in my book, and it describes some of the reasons why monopolies can exist. So let's go to page 206 in the second edition book, where it talks about section 9.1, how monopolies form barriers to entry. Now, what they're talking about here is why it is that only one firm is going to be dominating. Remember, that's what a monopoly is. One firm produces a unique product and there are no competitors in the market. Why is it that one firm is producing this one product and nobody can compete with them? So you're looking at barriers to entry. Now, some of those things can be called natural monopolies. These are things that the nature of the market itself limits. For example, a natural monopoly would be cable TV. Most cities have only one cable TV provider. They don't want to approve 20 companies to run those wires all over town. Every telephone pole would be sagging with wires if you let 20 different cable companies compete in the same town. Might bring price down, but it has major disadvantages. But more than that, the cable companies themselves would not compete, right? One can make a profit, maybe two could make a profit. But if you think about all the sheer cost of stringing all that wire all over the city, if you got 10 companies competing for your cable viewing dollar, none of them are probably going to make any money. So whoever the first one is to get the city approval to put those wires up, probably going to be the only cable company. And that's the case. Almost every American city has one. In a few, they have two competing cable companies. That's it. So the nature of that business means there just won't be more per city. The commercial aviation market's another example. Boeing has a huge share of the market. Airbus is its main competitor. It's a European consortium, largely French and German. But just think how complicated it is to make a giant factory to produce jumbo jets. All the equipment and the technicians and the like. The barriers to entry there are massive. You just aren't going to compete with a Boeing easily. Airbus did it because they got half a dozen countries to bankroll it. So there's a natural monopoly in the United States for large commercial aircraft manufacture just because nobody can afford to build the factories and hire all the technicians, get all that equipment to make them. Too complicated, too big, too much. So Boeing's on its own there, a natural monopoly because of that. Another one would be a control of a natural resource. If there is a natural resource and one party can get a major handle on it, we talked about, I think I mentioned this in class, Alcoa, the American aluminum company, Alcoa, had an overwhelming control of the bauxite market, the natural ore that aluminum comes from in the United States. There was nobody could get their hands on the aluminum because they already had the ore. Nobody else is going to be able to make aluminum unless they bought the ore from Alcoa, and they weren't going to sell it to them if they were direct competitors. So control of that resource. De Beers in the international diamond market has an overwhelming dominance. A true monopoly in diamonds with De Beers. Almost a true monopoly. You can also get a legal monopoly where the government itself says you are the sole provider. The U.S. Postal Service used to have a monopoly, at least, on the delivery of mail to your home every day. Nowadays, I suspect FedEx and UPS probably drop off somewhere in the same vicinity of as many letter-type things as the Postal Service does, not counting junk mail. But, for a long, long time, they were the only game in town for mail because the government gave them this legal monopoly on the assumption that we didn't want competition because it might drive them out of business and you wouldn't have anybody who could deliver a letter everywhere in a couple of days all over the United States. Well, turned out we do want that. We do want the competition. I think the Postal Service is probably a little better than it was when I was a kid now. And certainly FedEx and UPS can get the thing there. A little more costly perhaps, but they get it there more reliably. So anyway, competition has done well for that. Then you've got the question of intellectual property that can give a monopoly, and this is huge. We want to encourage companies to innovate. We want companies to be able to invest in research and development and come up with a product they can make money on. And we want new, innovative products in the country. We want people to be able to buy them. Now, no one's going to spend $20 million developing a product if some Tom, Dick, or Harry, the week after they start manufacturing, can just copy what they're making, what they spent $20 million developing, just copy it overnight and send the knockoffs out into the market. So we give companies protection for their intellectual property. And your book talks about a variety of those things. Trademark is one of them. Trademark is actually an appearance thing, how something looks. A logo, think about the swoosh on the side of a Nike or the curvy bottle of Coca-Cola. Those are trademarks. Now, that may not be great innovation, but it does mean that every consumer in the world knows a Coke bottle when they see one. No one would mistake it for a product of another company. So we want them to be able to have their trademarks protected. You don't want some Chinese company knocking off fake Coca-Cola bottles and anybody can put just any junk in them and sell them to the market pretending it's Coke. Copyright is intellectual property in the creative form of, authorship in literary, dramatic, musical, architectural, cartographic, choreographic, pantomimic, that's a good one, pictorial, graphic, sculptural, and audiovisual creations. In other words, art in the very broadest sense. But you'll notice that list not only writing, books, I bet you already knew that was copyrighted material, but pictures you may have taken, photographs or things you painted, but even dance and sculpture, all those things are copyrighted by the artists who produce them. We want creative talent to be able to have their unique say and be able to maybe make a profit off of it, not have somebody else just knock it off. So those are two important things, but probably for industry at least, patent is the number one thing. So trademarks got something to do with the appearance of a product, like a logo. Copyright relates to artistic creation, literary art, visual art, those kind of things, musical arts. But patent has to do with engineering design. I make a thing, and how I engineered it can be copyrighted if it is unique. In the patent office, you have to submit all kinds of data, all kinds of engineering stuff, and there are teams of expert engineers and expert property lawyers who pore over those in the patent office to say, has anybody ever done this before? And the answer has to be no for you to get a patent. It must be your original creation to get a patent. But once you get that patent, no one else can rip it off. No one else can do it unless they pay you for the right. So, that can, mean a drug company spends a huge amount of money developing a new drug. Well, they're going to make a lot of profit off that drug in the first decades because they're the only one that can produce that drug. Now, eventually, they might license it to other companies to make other versions of it. Eventually, they'll go off. The patent will expire, and which is shorter for drugs than for other things. And then somebody can make a generic equivalent. But until then, that one company that spent the money to develop the drug gets to be the exclusive manufacturer, have a monopoly on that drug. And it's going to cost more to consumers. So they can recoup their costs. There's also something called trade secrets. These are things that may not be unique. They are unique. They may not be engineering breakthroughs of an earth-shattering kind. They may not be great artistic creations. But a trade secret is something that your firm does uniquely that is important for your product. So the recipe for Coca-Cola. I'm pretty confident everything that goes into Coca-Cola is a common everyday item, but the precise way they mix them is what makes it Coke, as opposed to Pepsi and the other drinks. So that recipe is a trade secret, and you do have a high degree of protection, almost patent-like protection, on those kind of trade secrets, if they really are trade secrets. So all this is a form of regulation. Anytime the government's involved in regulating things, it might lead to the creation of a monopoly. But there has been a trend, at least since the 1980s, mostly to deregulate industries and lead to more competition. So, for example, I talked about the Postal Service. You used to have a monopoly on delivering mail to homes, and that was deregulated. And now you got FedEx, you got UPS, is DHL still doing it? All kinds of firms that might deliver your mail to your house. Who knows? Maybe Amazon will be doing it next year. They're already at my house at least once a day, so they might as well bring the mail too. But anyway, that's some of the crucial stuff we talked about already and the like on monopolies. But I wanted to go over that because that was now a long time ago. I'm going to go ahead and stop this lecture now, lecture 1 right now. When we resume, I want you to turn to chapter 10, where we're going to talk about monopolistic competition and oligopoly. So how these monopolies actually work, okay? So that was more or less a review of stuff we covered about 2.5 weeks ago, I think. But we'll get on to the stick now with new material, chapter 11. Thank you.